Welcome to What Works, a podcast where nonprofit leaders share real stories about what makes impact possible and their organizations thrive. I'm your host, Marla Moody, and today we're going to explore how career in public service can move from politics to nonprofits and how rewarding it can be to invest in others with care and compassion. My wonderful guest, Craig Rice, is CEO of Manna Food Center, a nonprofit dedicated for hunger and advancing food equality. With his leadership background in public politics and his current role at the helm of, of Manna, Craig brings powerful insights into how communities can come together to support one another and create lasting change. Get ready. Craig is here to show us what works. Welcome, Craig.
Well, thank you, Marla. And hey, everyone. Craig Rice here, CEO of Manna Food Center. And, it's an interesting track that I took because oftentimes people who go into the nonprofit space have been working in that space for a very long time. And my path was a little bit different. I actually decided once I was in corporate America for a long time and was very successful, but also wasn't very happy. And I wasn't happy because the changes that I was looking to see in my community weren't being affected by me being a success, nor by the companies I worked for being a success. Certainly, we saw economic impacts, those types of things, but I saw so many people who continue to fall by the wayside. And so I decided to run for elected office, first at the state level, where I served in Annapolis for 4 years as a state representative. And then following that, served for another 12 years on the Montgomery County Council as a district council representative, representing a little over 200,000 people in my district. And during that time, I had the ability to really dive in deep when it came to solving some of the problems that I saw in my community,
Okay.
some of the problems that I saw in other communities across this country that were very similar, and became very active in an organization called NACO, the National Association of Counties. And there I ended up chairing their Education and Human Services Committee. And it really gave me a deep understanding of the human services needs that were across this country and ways in which government could do more, but not just government could do more, but how so many nonprofits and community organizations throughout this country are fighting each and every day to make sure that the safety net is one that is strong for individuals to ensure that everybody has that opportunity for the American dream. That is one of the things that I think, especially now, is a contentious debate, but really shouldn't be. Because on both sides of the aisle, whether you're Republican, Democrat, somewhere in between, off on another party, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, people want to see people happy.
Yeah.
That is what
Yeah.
everybody truly wants at the end of the day, is for folks to be happy and be pleased about themselves, their lives, what they're able to attain. And then also hopefully that they'll see those same things for their children or their families, their friends, their relatives. It really is something where um, we don't want that to be denied to anyone. And we know that people will struggle. Life is tough. I wish I could say that life is something that's easy for all, even for those who are privileged. There are plenty of obstacles that stand in the way of folks that they might need help with. And so that's not just something for those who may be socioeconomically impacted. Everyone's going to have, whether it's a child dealing with drug addiction or domestic violence in a relationship, whether it's dealing with the loss of a family member, whether it's dealing with a health issue that has major impacts on your family and your mental health and well-being. Um, those are things that, regardless of how much money you make and how much money you have in the bank, what size house you live in, have deep impacts. And so I think at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is we're all human beings.
Yes.
And as human beings, we deserve the opportunity to truly live out what we consider to be this American dream. And I think this social experiment that started back, centuries
Mm.
ago, is certainly one where we as nonprofits play a unique role in terms of ensuring that experiment ends up a success.
Craig, thank you for being part of that experiment. The catalyst of what I'm hearing is public service and really thinking about your neighbor as another human being that we can celebrate and help build up. So love that. With your unique it is true, a lot of people from nonprofit have been in nonprofit forever, which is my career, 36 years in serving as a leader in nonprofit world. Loves it as hard as it was and is. Um, and then some come from the business background and then move in. You're the first person I've talked to that comes from the government service background and now. So I'd love to hear what are some of the compare and contrast of a public servant from a political standpoint, and a public servant as a nonprofit worker?
That's a great question. And it's one of those where a lot of people have asked me what the transition has been. And I would say the biggest part of that transition has been that to some extent, you have the ability and power as an elected leader to enact that change somewhat more quickly and more across the board
Mm,
because you can actually pass a law and mandate that something is going to happen. In the nonprofit space, you're advocating. So you're advocating for those policies that you know are going to then deeply impact communities that you serve. And you want to educate elected leaders about how that impact is going to be felt, how it's going to be beneficial to our society as a whole, all of those kinds of things. But both are necessary. I will tell people all the time that as an elected leader, the majority of the bills that I am proud of did not come from me as my own ideas. They came from the community. They came from people who said that they saw something that they didn't like. They saw an opportunity for us to be better, to perform better, or to perform more broadly to help more people in the community. And that was the impetus for a lot of legislation. And I would say, and I would argue that for the majority of elected leaders, if that's not the case, if they're not being led by their community, then they're not truly representative of their community when it comes to participating in a representative democracy. That truly is what it's about. And so I love being on this side because we are the catalyst for change. We
yes.
are the canary in the coal mine. We are the ones that are telling elected leaders and folks in our community as a whole, whether they're foundations, whether they're corporations, all who have a vested interest in our society becoming better. And we get to tell them about ways in which they can make that happen. That's a very cool place to be in, I think. And so, they both have their advantages, don't get me wrong. But for me, I think that being on the ground, and I thought I was on the ground before when I was in local elected office. I mean, that's pretty much as close to on the ground as you can be when it comes to the government space. But even more so from a nonprofit standpoint, it truly is being able to hear directly from families about the struggles that they have, about the ways in which they can be helped and lifted up so that they can become self sufficient. All the things that we all talk about are incredibly important. Um, and we play a significant role in terms of making that happen in the nonprofit space.
Wow, I love that. And the on the ground, what I'm hearing also is some hope in there, right? That we not, don't have to be victims. Um, as we get together and work together, as we see not only our needs but our neighbors' needs, that together we really can positively affect what's going on. And with the
That's
Manna
absolutely.
Food Center, I'm assuming that's a pretty important um, hot bed right now in light of just the needs. But yeah, what brought you to Manna Food Center?
Well, it's interesting because when I was still in elected office, unfortunately, that's when COVID happened, and we saw so much need that quickly. expanded throughout Montgomery County, throughout this region, throughout this nation. And it was one in which I worked closely with Manna Food Center and its leader at the time, Jackie DiCarlo. And she and I came forth with a huge funding package, millions of dollars to be invested in food insecurity, not just for families themselves, but also for children.
Mm,
I chaired the Education and Culture Committee and served on the Health and Human Services Committee. And so in those two committees, I got a chance to always see so many children who continued to go to bed hungry every night, come to school hungry, their only meal being that meal that they would get in the school that day. And so I knew that if they weren't at school, they weren't getting meals. If that was their lifeline to healthy, stable meals, then once schools shut down, what was going to happen to these children? And so, working very closely with Manna and so many other community food assistance partners throughout the county, came up with this way in which we were going to infuse lots of money and thank our federal government through the ARPA funds and ESSER funds that came out as well. But all of those allowed for us to be able to help to support those families and those children that were in need. And it opened my eyes to, again, how important this work is in being able to identify these areas in which we could have significant impact. And so when the opportunity came about, when Jackie told me that she was going to be retiring from Manna, um, she talked to me and I said, this is something that makes sense for me because I feel as though it's a continuation of my work. And I really
yeah.
liked what you said, Marla, when it came to public service, because I truly think that even in this day and age, when we have so much consternation around elected leaders in politics, the reality is that there are people across this country that are working hard each and every day to be a part of a representative democracy that stands up and steps up for those people who are in need, which is the function of government. It truly is not just to keep the trains running, but it's also to make sure that our society becomes a better place for all of its individuals who live in it. And so I think that this is a continuation of my work. It's a way for me to continue to make sure that we're lifting up individuals that we see in our community and advocate for better policies, better laws, things that we know are going to impact the families that we serve.
I love that, Craig. Thank you for that. When you think through a nonprofit, there's so many different pressures. Um, the financial, getting people that want to work for maybe a lower salary, getting volunteers. Where do you feel some of those pressure points to keep, the Manna Food Center functioning well?
That is a challenge. And for any leader who is running a nonprofit, they will tell you that one of the biggest challenges is understanding that when you walk through the doors, you know that you're making a sacrifice by working for a nonprofit. That is a reality. We can't pay the same wages that private sector employees can. That is a challenge for us, especially when it comes to acquisition of high quality talent that we know is then going to be able to help us further our mission, whether it's ending hunger, whether it's making sure that folks have a place to stay, whether it's eliminating healthcare disparities and giving more people access to healthcare, whether it's workforce development, all of those things that we know are incredibly important. And we need to have bright minds and folks
Mm,
that are motivated to make those things happen, to be a part of our team. But we can't pay them the same amount that a private sector company could, who also wants them to help them to build the best things, right? To create the best products that our community needs as well. And so it really is a conundrum. But I think that at the end of the day, what we look for when we're hiring individuals is looking for their heart. Because it's clear at the beginning that a person's in this not for the money, but because they believe in our mission and they believe in what I talked about, which is a better community, a better society for all, not just for some, but for all. And so I
Yeah.
think that overarchingly for us, it's hard to retain that talent, to make sure that there's a pathway, a career pathway for them, which is why as an organization, we push ourselves to continue to grow. We are not staying stagnant. We are, and part of our mantra as a recent has been serve better and serve more broadly. And so
Uh,
by doing that, we allow for individuals within our internal staff to be able to go through and migrate into different careers. We have folks that were in the warehouse that are now in the accounting department. We have folks in our market that are now in our call center. We have drivers that are now in our administrative office, right? So we are making sure that internally we're growing opportunities, but then we also see folks who leave the organization. And I always say that those opportunities are a celebration for us because as a CEO, as a leader of this organization, I feel as though we've done a good job of preparing that individual for their next career step. And so those are all wins for us. And it gives another person another opportunity to showcase their heart and to show how they want to help their community. And so I think while it's a challenge for us, I think that recognizing and meeting it head on, making sure that we're trying to take the steps necessary to grow the organization to allow for some of that transition to happen. Obviously, it can't happen for every single person within the company. But it does really allow for us to truly give folks insight into a future here at this company that goes far beyond their current job. And that I think is important when it comes to trying to retain talent, especially in a nonprofit space.
yes. So you're giving them not a position, but a career, an opportunity. And
That's the
that
key.
the idea that they're not pigeonholed in one place, but they can grow, really shows that you're showing their value as a person and growing and developing them as individuals. That's such a beautiful, um it's a beautiful way to do it because so often we forget. We forget that it's that they're coming there and they're doing their work, and it's not just to get a paycheck. And so they're fulfilled in that, but also knowing that they're valued will help that grow. Do you have any other secrets of, like, um, how you develop people?
So I think that one of the things that we've seen is access to educational opportunities and growth and expansion is incredibly important for us as well. So we partnered with our local community college, Montgomery College here, that has 3 campuses all around the county and provided opportunities for our employees to go take management or project management classes for
Okay.
free. And what that has done has, again, made sure that folks understand that we are continuing to further the skill sets for our employees. And so, whether that is something that for us means that an individual may at some point leave because now they've increased their skill sets and now see themselves in a role that may not be represented here at Manna, or if it's one in which it now gives them the opportunity to look at other positions, it
Yeah.
really does make folks feel better about the opportunities that they may have, but it also because they're thankful that we're providing them with those opportunities, they oftentimes stay because of that. And so, any investment that you make in employees always comes back to you,
Mm,
always. Because if that individual even may leave and go to another organization, they're going to talk about how they were treated at your organization. And so I encourage folks to always invest in their employees because that investment will come back.
yeah.
It is not about spending money. It is not about benefits. It is about investment. And, you have to see sometimes the long game. It is not a short term investment. This is a long term investment that I promise you, many times over, will certainly come back and reap benefits in the future. Because if that person goes on at some point to be a CEO of another organization, they're giving back. They're giving back to where they started. They're going to remember where that pathway started, and they're going to make sure that they're helping that organization that helped to get them there.
Hmm. So I love the fact that it's manna because manna is one of those things that wasn't scarce, right? It it renewed. There was no, there was abundance in it, right? And what I'm hearing you say is not a scarcity mindset, but an abundant mindset. And being able to pass that on as a CEO, passing that on as what I see it as a value. And every organization has values. They're usually written, and then there's other values that are true, but not written, and some are healthy and some are not. But your value, whether it's a written value or a just such a belief system, that that value penetrates into, um, what I would assume is then a healthy work environment. So I love that you brought that out. I'm assuming that there is the propensity of burnout, um, because it's hard to see maybe some of the things you see or the people that come in that are in a hard spot. You're wanting to care for them, oftentimes not a 9 to 5 job. How do you see burnout maybe even before it happens? And what are things that you do for yourself or for others around burnout?
Yeah, it's one of those, especially now. And the reason why burnout now is incredibly important is because we understand, as we were talking about before, that unfortunately, there are employees who are right on the margins themselves that work for me and this organization that are that close to needing the services that Mana provides. Because our uh, cost of living here in this region is so high. It really is one in which we are challenged with trying to meet the needs that continue to rise. You had mentioned before at the onset of this about some of the challenges that we see in the community. So let's bear those out. So we have rising costs when it comes to groceries. We have rising costs when it comes to utilities. We have rising costs when it comes to housing, rising costs when it comes to healthcare. All of those things impact every single one of my employees. And so the stressors that are associated with the things that they're seeing in their daily lives and understanding that we cannot raise our pay commensurate with the level of what we're seeing that's increased in the community creates stress for those individuals.
Mm,
So we've tried to be flexible and creative in terms of understanding that for us, this is really about creating a positive work environment. But it's also about sharing the stories because I think one of the most important things to understand is that while you may be challenged in your life, understanding that someone always is going to have challenges that may be larger than yours and appreciating the fact that you can actually help them is what's making a difference. It is that it is that buy-in, like you were alluding to before, about that vision, about that culture, about those values that are there that then oftentimes supersede. It is one of those that I equate the same thing to the mom who has a child that's trapped somewhere and all of a sudden has superhuman strength to be able to lift that thing that any other time you would ask them to be able to lift it and wouldn't be able to. But in this moment, is able to lift that so that they can free their child. This is the
hmm,
same sort of scenario. It's one of those in which folks understand and realize that the place where so many of the families we serve are is so challenging that they are going to give, right? That last ounce of energy to make that happen. But the key is that you've got to make sure that they understand those stories. And so I think the biggest challenge for us And we were just talking about this yesterday with my directors, is making sure that more of our folks in our staff who aren't out there in the field, who are working in the accounting department, right? Who are working in development, that they get an opportunity to see who it is that we're serving, that we see the mom that just 2 days ago had their two children out in the rain, picking up a box, walking to this distribution site, but then wasn't going to be able to walk back because the torrential downpour had started. So you've got two babies that are crying, boxes that are getting wet in the rain. And as an organization, we then say, we're going to call an Uber Lyft for you, ride share, so that you can take those boxes and your children home safely. These are the kinds of stories that our staff need to hear because that is making a tremendous difference in that mom's life. Not only would it be unsafe in a torrential downpour to be trying to cross roads with a whole bunch of items that you now have as far as groceries, but it also is just from a health standpoint, from trying to walk in the rain with two young children and they could get sick and all those kinds of things are allayed because of the work that we're doing, that we are doing, collective, right? And so it's again getting that and making sure that those stories are told so that folks really understand that at the end of the day, your role all helps to contribute to that end result of that mom and those children being better served. And that is why we make the sacrifices we do.
Love that. A few of the words that kind of popped in as you were talking about is empathy. Certainly that just to have that compassion is also gratitude, um, which is such a healthy thing, right? To see the good in the midst of, not shiny happy where, oh, just be happy, but recognizing that there are things to have gratitude for.
You know,
Another thing that really stood out as you were talking is the need for really quality communication from within, like, so that it's not just that your vision and your values or the people that are touching maybe the field, right? But you mentioned, the finance person and the people that maybe are a little further back. And as a person coming from operations, um I agree with that because the need for each of those people are so important. But what are ways that you have really helped put the value and just clear communication of what you're about to all your staff?
so it is that storytelling and it is through testimonials. And we share those testimonials at our staff meetings. So we share those stories and we encourage all of our folks who are on the front lines to bring those stories to bear when it comes to these opportunities of convening for us as an organization. So it is important. We do monthly staff meetings. And during those staff meetings that are sometimes virtual and sometimes in person, we have an opportunity for folks to share, and we call them Manna Mission Moments.
Nice.
And so it really does give an opportunity for folks to be recentered in why we're doing the work and also how the work is then impacting our community as a whole. So it is exactly that. And the power of the why. Why do we do this work? That storytelling is incredibly important. And it is something where I wanted to touch on something you said because compassion, people always think about that just being a feeling. But we take it a step further, and that compassion is more than just feeling that empathy, but also then having the wherewithal to do something about it. That is the compassion. We would describe a person who sees an elderly lady who's fallen down on the street, and you walk over and you're like, wow, and you feel bad that that woman has fallen. The true compassion is helping that woman to get back up and ensuring that they're okay and ensuring that they can get to wherever it is that they're going. That's compassion. The feeling of empathy is looking at them and saying, "Oh my God, I hope that person isn't hurt." But that is where we are trying to take this in terms of that we own this, and that's why the mantra of more than just a meal has stuck within the organization because we know it is more than just putting plate of food on a table, but it is talking about the reason why they didn't have that food to begin with. And that's what happens that we share with our employees over and over again to make sure that they understand that while our role is important as a stabilizing factor in where it is that so many families who are facing food insecurity are challenged, the reality is that it's larger than just us. And it is something that is going to require a village of nonprofits, government, corporate, community organizations, faith-based institutions, all coming together to truly lift that family up and help them to achieve self-sustainability.
Love that. Craig, what would you tell another leader? Because they're getting the pressure of all the different things. H with all the pressures that are on a CEO, uh, what would you tell them about how to still have compassion?
Yeah, times are tough right now. And so many people are being pitted against one another. Folks are concerned about whether or not different decisions may significantly financially impact the organization or, in some cases, shutter an organization's doors. What I would say is that for any leader who is struggling, which is a lot of us, uh, is to remain centered in why you wanted to do this work to begin with. You can be a catalyst for change in so many different arenas. And whether that is this current role that you play, or it could be in another role. I've seen a lot of nonprofits that have shifted their work because of things that are happening right now. If you can't provide legal aid, but you can provide assistance for folks to sign up for benefits, you're still doing incredible work and helping those individuals, right? One is not of higher value than the other. They're all needed. And
Mm,
they're all needed by individuals in our community. And so it is okay to pivot, right? We have talked a long time, and I actually had an opportunity to attend our founders memorial service maybe about a little over a month ago. And Reverend Laundring, who created this organization, started off with giving folks prepared meals out of the back of a church. And now we've migrated to a place in which we have vouchers that go to families so that they can use them at ethnic grocery stores because understanding that we can't give food for some of our families that are immigrants and have different dietary needs that are outside of what we can provide as a whole approach for serving the 60,000 participants we serve is a difference. It's a complete difference from where we started because we're actually just giving them basically money to go shop at a grocery store. And so these are the kinds of things to where, again, we understand that things will change. We now have a choice market to where instead of getting boxes, families go in and shop like they're in a grocery store. They're allocated a certain number of items, whether it's produce or shelf stable items like rice and pasta and beans and breads and meats. So they're basically doing that, which is very different from where we started. And so don't be afraid to change. The very technology that we're utilizing right now didn't exist some 25 years ago. And so if you're a 25-year-old organization, understanding that change and significant change is a part of what it is that we need to do to meet the needs of this new and ever-changing society, then you're kind of missing the boat. Yes, history matters. And yes, commitment to serving matters, but it can look different. And that's the thing that I want to encourage everyone to be open to. That change is actually good because it really is trying to keep pace with what it is that we're seeing that's happening around us.
mm. Craig, so well said. Um, because you can have compassion when there's fear involved. We compassion dies, and also creativity. And I believe that a great leader not only sees and gets things going, but they do when they see where we need to go next. to have the courage to say, most people are going to say this is crazy, but the courage and the creativity and the knowledge of who to bring around to make that happen. So I love the history that you just kind of touched on with the Manna Food Center. But like you say, we always have to pivot. We always have to do that, which is crazy. And um, for me, when had seen other leaders do things that I didn't agree with, and I always had the whole judgment, it's like, yeah, but what if they're just ahead of me in my thought process? And so, you know, bringing people around to continue to encourage, but, and the humbleness to listen to other people, and also the courage to say, you'll get it soon. You just don't see it yet. It's okay. But the courage to stand out and do that. So love that.
Yeah.
Love that. If someone wants to get involved in the Manna Food Center or those like it around our great country, what would you suggest?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, look, we can always use the assistance. And I always say it's the three T's: time, talent, and treasure. Those are the ways in which you can help any organization. But of course, any of your food assistance providers across this country will welcome it. So let me talk about time. Time is, of course, whether it's volunteering, and there's so many things. Folks have a narrow view of what it means to volunteer at a food center. They automatically think it's, packing up boxes, which is a volunteer opportunity, or helping people when it's one of our choice markets and just advising them on the types of food and, if they have questions about nutrition values, all those kinds of things. Those are great. And those are incredibly important and a part of the staples. But we've actually migrated to something a little bit different and taking our volunteers out into the field. We have partners with our farm providers, and those farm providers, if you've ever been to a self-pick orchard, you've been out there to where they have rows that are designated for you to go down. And once those rows are done with the public being able to pay and purchase, and pick their blueberries or their apples, then the remaining fruit is allowed to then just drop and fall to the ground and serve as fertilizer for the plants. Well, the reality is there's a lot of good fruit that's still left on those vines, on those trees. And so we have volunteer opportunities that are gleaning opportunities where we go out to those farms and actually glean that fruit, glean that produce, and then bring that back to our warehouse, saving significant amounts of money. Those are the kinds of things that make a difference. So it is not just time in the classic sense of packing a box, but it's also being a part of nature, being out there, enjoying and having a great team building activity, and being able to help to support your local food bank. And then, of course, when it comes to talent, there's so many people across the board, whether you're skilled at bookkeeping, whether you have a legal degree, and want to help when it comes to, look, we don't have a lawyer on staff. And so when it comes to some of these things, I reach out to individuals who I know are going to do pro bono work for us. And they actually help us to look over contracts and make sure that everything is okay. Those are the types of talent we're talking about. But if you're an artist and want to design something so that we can auction it off at one of our galas, there are all kinds of ways in which you can help. And then, of course, at the end of the day, treasure. The reality is that there isn't a single nonprofit out there that doesn't need additional assistance. And by need, I mean because we know that the problem that they're trying to solve is larger than the organization's capacity. I don't know of any nonprofits out there that will tell you that they are addressing every single bit of the problem that they're seeing in their community. And so that is the reason why we continue to ask for donations that help us to try and serve better and more broadly. And so that is why and how the treasure then can help us to get there. So ways in which you can help: time, talent, treasure. Of course, mannafood.org is our particular website, but I encourage you wherever you are throughout your community to not only get involved and engaged with your local food assistance providers, but also find out what they're doing. Just the knowledge of the work that they're doing and how you can be a part will definitely, I know, be life changing.
Love it. Thank you. Let's end there, on that happy note. And one thing I've heard, if I just kinda wanna think through our time, is every person has a contribution to make, and it's finding how your passions line up with the needs, and to have an abundance mindset rather than a meager mindset, and helping our neighbor, developing our staff, communicating well, all build into, making people the best they can be. So
That's it.
Craig, what a delight, and thank you again um, for joining us today.
Well, thank you. It's been tremendous. And just talking about this, as you were asking what some of the ways in which CEOs can feel better, I will tell you, just going through something like this and talking with you today, Marla, continues to re energize me about the work that's being done and how much more work I need to do.
Definitely. Well, thank you.